Yeah.
Hello,
Live.
everyone. Good evening. Welcome to Feature Fiction Reviews, and this is another edition of Creators Collective. And today I have the wonderful Chels from Not So Secret Bookaholic. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm all right.
I always find that first question when you do interviews anytime, because obviously you have a couple of minutes backstage at least, and you have the chat and you're like, oh, how are you? And then you have to re-answer it and you're like, oh, I'm still
Yeah,
good. I'm still fine.
yeah. We've been talking for like 8 minutes
Yeah.
backstage.
Catch up on
Call
life.
it backstage. Yeah, and then you have to go, how are you today? Well, I'm fine because we've been talking 8 minutes.
Yeah, I'm still fine. Thank
Exactly.
you.
So we were literally just talking backstage that you're literally pretty much done for this year for Christmas holes.
Yes, I am so excited.
Oh,
I just want to clean out my brain and read, because this year has been so hard mentally for me for some reason. Like, nothing truly awful, don't get me
yeah,
wrong, but I just haven't had like the mental capacity to read, and it's really shown. Like, I've just got so many books that are like half read and I'm like, should really finish that. Oh, I've got distracted again. Right, okay, can't do that. And then
yeah,
just keep adding to the pile. So that's what this month has been. I've been slowly weeding down the books that I'm like, I'm really just not going to finish that this year. I'll try it again next year, or DNF it completely and get rid of it.
yeah. October and November have been a right off for me. I think I finished like 3 books.
Yeah.
That was it. Just some family stuff going on. So yeah, it's frustrating when you can't finish the books that you wanted to get done that month, but life
Yeah.
happens.
When you want to just, when there's part of your brain that's going, you want to read. I'm like, I know I want to read. I just don't want to read any. And I've not got a small collection. It's not the largest, but it's not like I'm not spoiled for choice, but I still can't find anything that I'm like, I'm going to stick with that
Yeah.
for some reason, which is fun.
I mean, I've got the physical shelf, and then I've got my old virtual shelf and my ebook, which is scarier than the real shelf.
Oh no, this is scarier than my Kindle. 100%. I am way more of a physical trophy hoarder than ebook,
Yeah,
because I'm very much, if I can't see it, it doesn't exist. And I know there's certain things that people can say about that about me, but we just don't look at any of the boxes, and we're like, well, it's fine. If I can't see it, I don't read it and I forget. So I've made an active effort this year to actually be picking up my Kindle and reading things that is on there, because it's the easiest way to access, especially indie books.
yeah,
Because
absolutely.
obviously they've had it formatted and all that fun stuff, and sending it out is not, it's nothing compared to the postage costs of a physical copy. And I appreciate every book I'm ever sent, whether it's ebook, physical, or audio.
Yep.
But it's just actively remembering, I have my Kindle, I need to read that, and I don't need to take 50 books with me when I travel for work.
Yeah.
Down my suitcase.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's there was a thread on, I think it was Blue Sky, where there was a thing going, this Christmas please support independent bookstores, which is absolutely right. But also you have to remember that a lot of indie authors don't have the capacity or the finances to get their books into physical shops.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of people are going, try not to use Amazon, try not to use the big corporations. But unfortunately, Amazon is the way that a lot of indie authors get their books either physically printed or or formatted for ebook. So I think you kind of have to do both. So I mean, I always do both. I've got an independent secondhand bookstore that I go in every month and buy £5 worth of books, and I come out with like 6 books because they're like 50p or £1.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I've discovered authors I've never heard of because their books are now out of print. They're like early 80s or 90s authors that are now out of print. So, but you just find these little gems in these secondhand bookstores.
That's
So
so
yes,
cool.
support indie bookstores, but also support indie authors by buying their books through Amazon, because that's sometimes the only way they get to put their books out in the world.
Yeah, and I think it's the flip side of that as well, is that it is tough for a lot of people at the minute.
Yeah.
Like Although I can sit here with my shelves, but this has not been a collection in the past 6 months. Like, this has been years of work. It's,
Yeah.
and sometimes you go through patches where buying books, either ebook or physical books, is just not feasible because whatever financial issues you're going through,
Mm.
or even just day to day, sometimes it's not feasible for readers to also buy it. There's like a flip side to both things, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was talking to Adrian Gibson on Monday, and yeah, it was a really, really good chat actually. But he talked about, indie authors, not only write their books, they have to format it, they have to pay for the cover, they have to
Yeah,
market. It's expensive putting a book out there, and
yeah,
I think
it
if
is
you can only
expensive.
if you can only put it in an ebook format, then
Mhm.
that's Amazon are a very, very big help to indie authors in that sense.
Yeah, and not everyone, as much as you can be a talented writer or talented in any respect, not everyone is built to do every single facet of putting out a book.
Yeah,
Like, not everyone is clued up on the marketing side, or not everyone catches the right algorithm to get to the people that they want to sell their book to.
mm,
It's very difficult, and
yeah,
it's time consuming, and a lot of authors, be it trad or indie, they don't do this full time. So I feel like indie authors have it so much rougher in a lot of respects because they have to put on all these hats and they don't have a team behind them to help.
yeah. Yes, they get complete creative control, but they also get the work that they
Yeah.
have to put in.
Hmm.
So exactly. Yeah, I mean, I've seen your shelves before. I saw your shelves in your old house.
I had
So
less shelves then.
you had less shelves then, but you do you still do your little subscriptions?
I have cancelled all of them now, actually.
Oh, have
I
you?
have got my eye on, I think Fairy Loot are coming out with like an adult fantasy, and it's rumoured that their first book will be the new Joe Abercrombie book.
Oh, okay, the Devils.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I have been slowly cancelling all of them this year, really, because I found that the books that were coming, um, I wasn't reading them as fast as they were coming in. So I'm
Mm,
getting, a book a month from, at one point it was 3 subscriptions, which is 3 books a month over 12 months. That's a ridiculous amount of books. Plus it's roughly, give or take, £25 per subscription, including shipping. So that's
yeah,
already what, £75 a month on 3 books, which is
a lot.
mental for anyone. But during COVID, when I wasn't working and I wasn't traveling and I had no expenses other than food, it was a really nice thing to get fun post.
Mm,
And now that we're out back in the world again and I have other things to pay for, um, it's not as much of a priority anymore. And I did find that a lot of the books towards the end, because I've only just cancelled my last one, which was Fairy Loot, it's only been the last year or so where I've noticed, actually, I'm not interested in any of these books. They're very pretty,
mm,
don't get me wrong, but I don't actually want to read any of them, or I haven't heard of them, and
yeah,
it's a waste. And it takes up space on my shelves, and then trying to get rid of them afterwards, like you're trying to sell them on, and some of them you can sell because they're well-known authors or they've hit it big and people are like really excited for the special editions. And
yeah,
some of them you're just like, I can't physically shift this. Like,
yeah.
no one wants it and neither do I.
Like, what was the what kind of genres? Uh,
So all of mine were fantasy.
right.
But what I have noticed in the past couple of years, especially with the YA boxes, is that there has been a lot of romance fantasy books
Right.
added into subscriptions. Now, a common thing I say on my channel is I am not a romance girly. I do
Mm,
not enjoy like that sort of thing. I can if it's a subplot, but not the main plot. And I think that it's great if you can read these books and you love them, like, fair play. And maybe it's just because I really hate miscommunication. But sometimes I just can't read them.
yeah.
And I feel like although I can still enjoy YA writing, I feel like I'm really getting into my adult fantasy era, if I'm
Yeah.
quoting Taylor Swift here, and reading a lot more. Target demographic. I don't read YA, but I'll link him with Taylor Swift. But that's not to say that I've got rid of all of the YA off my shelves. I've got so much YA that I still want to read.
Yeah.
It's just much more of the focusing on the fantasy with the romance being a subplot YA that I've got left to conquer on my shelves.
I'm pretty much the same as you. I don't read romance fantasy. It's generally not not what I enjoy reading. But I know there's a huge market out there for it,
100%.
so which is
Yeah.
great.
And it's all taken off on Book Talk, and
Yeah.
I've recently started. Well, I don't post on it, but I've recently got a TikTok account. And when I've come across booktube videos on there, or Book Talk videos, I should say, a lot of the recommendations are just a lot of romance fantasy. Now, that could just be the algorithm I'm part of, but at the minute, it's either romance fantasy or Brandon Sanderson, and like there's no in between. And that's it.
Yeah. It's hard. It's funny because I went into my local Waterstones the other week, and they always have their like tables that are kind of in the middle of where they think, and the tables are literally just full of Sarah J. Maas and just very much the coined
Book Talk made me
romantasy.
buy it.
Eh?
Book Talk made me buy it.
But I mean, but the market and the bookshop market, or the but like the mainstream chain bookstore market is very much pushing that, because that is the biggest seller at the minute.
It's what people are coming back to reading, and do not get me wrong, I love the fact that people are rediscovering reading.
Right. Yeah.
I love that. However, the thing that is for me doesn't work is that all of these new reviewers that I'm finding are just recommending the same stuff. And for me as a reader, that doesn't work, because I want to know the new stuff that I haven't heard of. I do want to read Sarah J. Maas, don't get me wrong. I am almost finished with the Throne of Glass series, and my friend has started ACOTAR, so I feel like I need to read it because it's got her back into reading, so I want to know what she's read. Especially then, because I recommend her a lot of stuff anyways, and just give her books that I've got. That way I can actually be like, oh, actually, you enjoyed this, so I think you might enjoy this. Or let's try and edge you away from that a little bit and get you into some fantasy as well. But otherwise, yeah, the rest of the romance is just not, it's not for me. And I think that it's great that people love it and it's bringing people back to reading, but I want to see other things being promoted as well.
Yeah. It's one of those marketing trends. I think, in about 6 months' time, I'll go into Waterstones and it'll be a completely different subgenre of fantasy that they're then pushing forward.
100%.
So, but as you said, it is bringing younger people into reading. Yeah, it's bringing a lot of women into reading, girls into reading, which is great. And hopefully, that reading the fantasy will help migrate them to other subgenres of fantasy, which would be fantastic. But coming back to the point about like everyone's kind of like talking about or reviewing or discussing the same thing.
Yeah.
And it is harder, particularly for smaller booktube channels like mine.
And
yours. Yeah, to stand out from the booktube, because booktube, I mean, 5 years ago, booktube was kind of a very niche thing. It's flipping massive now.
Yes.
So it's harder to kind of get our voice heard in the booktube community.
Yeah. I've actually been thinking about this a lot recently, especially because it's end of year and reading resolutions for next year, and I set myself all these goals at the start of the year of I'm going to hit this many followers on all these platforms and blah blah blah, and I've come close to none of them, and I have had to kind of take a step back and like reevaluate what I want to do and how I want to approach it, because like you said, it is very hard to be heard. I love doing videos, I love doing interviews with amazing authors and people like yourself who will just chat books. Absolutely love that. However, it can be quite demoralizing when you, especially when you have been uploading and making content for however long. Next year, I think, will be my 5th year on BookTube.
Wow.
And I've never been 100% consistent because life, and I work a very in-person taxing job, which a lot of other people do as well.
Which
But
takes you all over the world. So
I travel a lot, which is great. I get time to read on planes, but it also makes content a little bit trickier, because if I don't pre-plan and pre-schedule, then it's not going to go up. And
no.
To me, that's kind of fine, but to the algorithm, that's a big no.
Mm.
And it's something that I've been thinking about how to tackle next year, because I want to keep doing this, but there is also a part of me that's like, why don't we just go into the mentality of next year is my last year, and if I make waves, amazing, and if I don't, I've given it a good try. I'll still stay in the community. I love the community, and like upload as and when I feel like it, but maybe take the pressure off.
Yeah.
Because I feel like a lot of us are all I've said this in a vlog recently. Like, I feel like we're all just shouting into the void, and some people are heard, and that's amazing, and I'm so glad. And some people just don't. And whether that's because the algorithm is like, you're creating all the same content as other people, we're going to boost that, or you're creating the same content as everyone else, we're going to squash it, or however it works and decides, because I don't know how YouTube thinks. I really wish I did, but I don't. So it's really hard to, like you say, break through. But sometimes you are also watching other people start, upload for a month, and then suddenly they've skyrocketed and they've hit some algorithm, and you're like, amazing, well done.
Yeah.
But what's wrong with the stuff that I've done that has, like, we're posting the same sort of stuff, so what's the difference? And I think that can be kind of hard to come to terms with as well.
Yeah, it's really tough, and I've been in a place quite a few times. I mean, my channel's is relatively new; it's only about a year old, and it's been like rebranded already, which I'll come like. I mean, one of the reasons why I did that is because I thought, okay, what I'm doing with Luke's Book Nook is very generic. It was too generic, and it wasn't getting the traction I wanted, and it wasn't actually really making me very fulfilled as a booktuber. So kind of rebranding at this, focusing on sci-fi, because I did a lot of research, and there's actually, if you kind of do a percentage, I would say that 80% of booktubers of fantasy and sci-fi do primarily fantasy with a bit of sci-fi, and 20% are just sci-fi channels. So I thought, well, I'll try and go for that 20%, because maybe I can make some movements in there a bit more. I'm still doing fantasy, but I just want to focus on sci-fi. And then I thought, well, let's try and do some live stuff, and because I think that's because not a huge amount of booktube channels do a lot of lives. I mean, you've got A Bearded Darkness, whose channel, fantastic, is just interviews, live interviews,
and stuff.
Which is brilliant.
But
I kind of wanted to create, especially with Creators Collective, just create a really relaxed atmosphere of just two booktubers or two content creators just chatting. And just discussing their love for books and stuff. So I thought, well, there's not a huge amount of that around, so I'll do a monthly thing for that. And then I thought, I'll throw some live author interviews in there. So I've ticked up a little bit on the subs, so I think maybe it's working. So I gave it a try this month to see how it was going. I thought, okay, so next year we'll start doing that. I'll do one a month of the author and one a month of the Creators Collective to see how it goes. But hopefully that'll get more engagement.
Yeah, and I think people really enjoy seeing interviews as well, especially authors that don't do a lot of interviews. I do some interviews on my channel. I'm not nowhere near as consistent as you plan to be. I just talk to the odd author when I'm doing book tours. I feel like that's an added it's not an incentive, like an added bonus that I can give an author is like, here, have my platform. Like, if people want to tune in, brilliant. Like, I just want them to hear you talk about your books. And I think one of the best ones I've ever done is when I interviewed Jeff Noon and Steve Beard, who wrote Gog Magog and Ludluda, that's just released through Angry Robot, because they don't actually do a lot of interviews. So having that platform online, because they do stuff in person, but they don't necessarily do the online stuff. Having that platform online, I had people commenting going, this is really cool. Like, I'm glad that there's an interview with Jeff and Steve, or just Jeff, because people have grown up reading Vert, and he's got another book coming out next year as well called Pollen. So he's been writing for years, but he doesn't necessarily have such a digital footprint.
Yeah.
So being able to talk to him, I was like, amazing. One, you've got so much knowledge, which is really cool. But also just having something different on my channel, because it's just an added extra, in my opinion. And I
Yeah.
can't offer a lot. I can't edit. I can't proof. I could proofread, I suppose, but not on a high level. So if I can offer anything, that's probably what it is. Come and talk to me on my channel.
Yeah. No, I've watched a couple of interviews with authors. They're really good. And it's a great idea to like, because I think a lot of indie authors, you know, they might either not feel very comfortable on camera, or they've never done like a online interview. So kind of
Yeah.
helping them break into that as well is good. And it always, yeah, as you say, you know, if readers have never seen an interview with that author and they see that a booktube channel is doing it, they'll tune in.
100%.
So yeah, really good idea.
Yeah, and we have to remember as well, a lot of people within this community are introverted. Some of us are extroverted like me. I'll happily talk to anyone. But the amount of authors I've spoken to that's like, yeah, no, I don't want to do that. I want to write my books,
Yeah.
and send them out, and people can read them and DM me about them. That's cool, but I don't really like being outside, like at all the shows.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I have to remember that. Like, I would quite happily just go and chat to people. Be like, hi, how are you? Tell me about your life.
Yeah, Ellen Bayan, who I interviewed a couple of weeks back, whose debut book is my book of the year,
The Wingspan of Treason.
Wingspan of Treason. Fantastic book, absolutely fantastic.
I've got it on my list.
Oh, I really want to know your thoughts, because it is my book of the year. My book of the year was Mushroom Blues. Sorry, Adrian, she knocked you off your top spot.
You tell him that on Monday.
Yeah. But she, you know, she said, you know, she's not going to be doing many interviews, but because we'd had some good discourse privately through DMs, you know, she was like, yep, I'll come on your channel and stuff. And, you know, she didn't want to show her face because of the sensitivity of her job. But it was still great chatting with her. Very intelligent woman, very fascinating lady, and her job's really fascinating. So yeah, but her book's just mind-blowingly good for a debut. It's ridiculous. You'd think she'd written like 10 books before this one came out, but it's insane.
I think I've had that feeling about EJ Doble. I don't know if you've read his
not yet. It's
work.
on the TBR.
His writing for me was like that. I was like, no way this is your first book, and no way you're as young as you are. Like that can't happen. But the funny thing with him is that he's a teacher. So when my interview went live with him, I had a couple of people commenting going, this guy's my teacher for such and such. And
yeah,
I was like, oh, I wonder if that's a problem. But in this day and age, I suppose if you're on the internet or it's like, I've got friends who are teachers, so they change their names on socials so that their kids can't find them, really.
Yeah, I've got a couple of friends who are teachers who have done that as well.
Yeah,
but they do find them sometimes.
Well, yeah, the thing is, you're going to, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Unfortunately, that's what it's like in a digital world. It's not just like you run into them in Tesco's. You can find them online.
How are the book tours going? You mentioned that earlier on. Like, was that started this year, wasn't it? Was it started this year, or was it a year before you started it?
Yes. So I've done book tours for other people pretty much since I started. Maybe 2021. But myself and Lisa, have we started indie book tours, which is, funnily enough, dedicated to indie authors. And their books, whether it's cover reveals or 3-day or 5-day tours, that started in January. We had a really, really good year. We've learned a lot as well, because there's so many things that people just don't tell you about starting anything, obviously. But especially a business that is just online and you don't physically have a product, we don't physically have employed staff. We have reviewers who volunteer their time and in exchange they get either an ebook or an audiobook or a physical book, depending what the author is up for providing.
Yeah.
And then they provide their thoughts, and it has been tough in some regards because our reviewers are fantastic. We have some fantastic reviewers, but obviously life gets in the way. And then you have the sometimes you've got the problem of an author going, oh, I see such and such has missed the post, and then you get in contact with them and they're like, oh, I'm ever so sorry, something's happened in my life, and you're like, well, I can't stop that. And then you have to explain that to the author and still make them and still try and give them the same value. And that can be really hard because you don't have a tangible product to be like, here you go, you're buying X. You can feel it, you can see it. It's literally just online. And that can be really tricky because I think I never realized, because I don't have a book, I've not tried to market a book. I just try and help as much as possible when people reach out to me with theirs. I think it can just be really surprising how much a book tour can impact you or just flow by.
Yeah.
And that's really hard to gauge. Like, I can't guarantee that you're going to get X amount of book sales or X amount of interaction on your accounts. It's kind of like, try this. We will do everything we can. We will promote you to the ends of the earth, and we've got some fantastic reviewers who will share the word about your book. If people want to listen, they will listen. However, sometimes they don't. And that's really hard.
Yes. I imagine it is. And you're essentially paying the author with trust.
Yeah.
Essentially. And that's, it's not an easy thing to do, particularly when you're trusting reviewers to produce a review of the book that will helpfully go towards sales, but it's never a guarantee. So it must be really quite tough.
It's just another alley for authors to try because they can shout about their books as much as possible. And again, sometimes people will listen, sometimes people won't. And it's like, we offer you this other avenue to try and to spread word and go through our reviewers platforms and that, and they'll tag you and we'll do this and we'll do that. But again, sometimes it's just like, I'm really sorry that you feel like it's not hit what you expected. I don't know how to quantify that.
Yeah.
It's very hard.
And again, you're at the mercy of the algorithm. With online book tours, you are at the mercy of the algorithm. So you can retweet those reviews as much as you like, but who's going to see them?
Exactly.
Particularly with X, which has just become a bit of a mess with its algorithm, because I don't think even the people working on it know how it works at the minute.
No, it's all ads. I used to flick between, because there's like two sides to it now, isn't there? There's like the following side and then the discover side or something.
That's for you, and then there's
following.
Discover or following, something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So I used to flick between the two because I'd be like, I'll find new people. However, the one that's just like random is pretty much just ads and then people talking about politics. I'm not here for that.
Yeah.
No. Very specific politics. Don't get me wrong, I know books are political. I've seen all that. But very specific. Not really here for that. And then my following is great. However, I'm not being as exposed to authors and reviewers as I was before, because it's just who my group are retweeting or reposting, whatever it's called now, and following. So if they're following the same people, I'm not getting exposed to anything new. Because
it's really bloody hard at the minute. Yeah. It's hard for authors to reach out to reviewers, and it's hard for reviewers to reach out to authors, because a lot of the stuff we're posting is not getting seen by the right people.
100%. And I'm taking part in Vlogmas this year. I'm doing like shorts on my YouTube channel and uploading them to Instagram. I was trying to upload to Instagram. It completely just kicked the bucket on me. So I shut my phone down, went to log back in, and now it's like, no, there's a problem. You can't log in.
Jesus.
And I'm like, right, went straight to X, and everyone's like, oh, Instagram's down. Brilliant. Like, I can log into my personal account, but I can't log into my Bookaholic account. Fantastic. That's great. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I don't use Instagram much, but Mel does because she's a freelance artist, so she uses it
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
She gets very frustrated with Instagram, very, very frustrated.
Yeah, I can understand when it doesn't load, but you know what? Like the fact that it's just completely kicked me out, and it's like, no, don't know who you are. You do. My
Yeah.
picture is there. That is my face. I know it's my face. I have that face. She got very mad at it earlier, and then WhatsApp wasn't working as well because they're all owned by the same people. And I was just
Yeah, all run by
like,
Meta, who are just as bad as
why?
Muscovian.
I know.
Yeah,
So Blue Sky's great, but it's not as it's still growing.
yeah,
And I like all these like starter lists and stuff that people have got. They're pretty cool.
yeah. The
But yeah,
starter packs have been very helpful.
yeah, but it's still growing. And then trying to get yourself onto someone else's starter pack is a minefield in itself. Um, so
Yep.
it's basically like starting again. It's just like, oh, brilliant.
It is, and a lot of people, and I understand why. A lot of people just go, "Nah, I'll stay on X. I cannot start again. It's taking me
Yeah,
5 years to build this and thing." So I'm kind of staying on both. Weirdly, right, is that when the big migration happened and everyone went over to Blue Sky, I had
yeah,
so much interaction. Now it's completely slowed down to
yes.
almost not a lot, and my X interaction is actually increasing again, which is
Oh,
bizarre.
that is weird
Yeah,
because I found the
but
same
not a
thing
lot. But it's a bit more than it was,
better than
say,
it
a month
was.
ago. Yeah,
Yeah, I've got the same thing. Like I went over to Blue Sky. I'd been on Blue Sky for a while. Everyone came over because they had enough of X.
yeah.
My followers shot up from like 100 to whatever it is now, 400, 500, and then yeah, nothing. And it's like, what?
Yeah, it's weird,
What's
isn't it?
happening? And it's the same with like Vlogmas. So I've been uploading every single day a short on YouTube and then taking it off YouTube and putting it on Instagram.
Mm.
And Instagram has been consistent, like similar kind of views. For some reason, two of my videos on YouTube over 400 views, which never happens.
Wow.
And now they've dropped back down to like 7 and 10. And you're like, what?
It's so weird,
Like,
isn't it?
I'm posting consistently at the same time every single day. What? I don't
Yeah.
get it.
I
And this is why it's so hard
yeah,
because you're like, okay, brilliant. Now what?
yeah.
Like, is this it for the rest of time or not?
I've
And then
started to play. I've started to play around with posting at specific times of the day as well to see if that it does make a difference. Particularly,
yeah,
as you know, we have a lot of interaction with American bloggers and booktubers and
yeah,
authors. And then you've got to play around with like East Coast, West Coast, Central. We've all got different time zones.
yeah. No, I
So
stick to 6 o'clock UK
I
time.
try and post like when it's morning in America and when it's early evening in America when you all get home,
Yeah.
which is quite late at night for us. But
Hmm.
but I do try and post those around those times, and it does seem to help with the interaction a little bit.
Mm.
So I think time of day is definitely a factor in
Yeah.
kind of getting your posts kind of seen.
Yes. Yeah. I currently just post at like 6 on whatever days I post, which at the minute is like Mondays and Thursdays if I'm doing 2 videos a week.
Yeah.
Which is great for UK because that's people have come home from work and they're
Yep.
sat scrolling. So fantastic. But yeah, for America, that's probably still quite early.
Yeah. Well, for our a podcast I do with my friend Baz, he does all the social media stuff, and he'll post in the morning for the UK stuff, and then
Hmm.
he'll repost the social media post at 8 o'clock for the US crew. He
Yeah.
says, and that seems to work with interaction as well. So it's definitely something to think about to try and get.
Algorithm tricks with Luke.
Yeah, it's hard being a smaller booktuber, just trying to get that
Yeah.
exposure.
Yeah, and then there's also like there was a period 2021, I want to say, where there was a lot of collab going on.
Mm,
And that was probably when, in my opinion, the height of the reading sprints were.
yeah.
So a load of people going onto one channel, sitting and reading in silence on and off for like 30 minutes to an hour, and then coming back and having a bit of a chat. Brilliant. I love reading sprints. Keeps me
Mm.
entertained. Because I've got someone talking and I'm like, right, okay, I can scroll now. And then they're like, right, okay, timer's on. I'm like, right, I got to concentrate for this time and I'll get stuff done. And it usually works. And I feel like there was a point in like 2021 where a lot of booktubers, a lot of English booktubers were going onto each other's accounts, doing these sprints, or starting channels and having some really cool ideas, but also teaming up with other people. So then the people that already had a following saw these new people and then they got a boost as well, which is very clever. But I know it doesn't work for everybody.
Yeah.
Which is sad. But I know we all can't be at the top either. So it's like a mixed bag kind of thing.
Mm.
But there are some ideas that I've had in the past. I'm like, oh, it'd be really cool if I could talk to X and ask them to, I don't know, do this, or ask if they'll appear in this idea. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I just don't want to bug people.
That's,
And it
I
was,
mean, that's kind of what I've done with Creators Collective. I've just gone, Luke, you've got to be brave, and I've just DM'd some booktubers that I really like and go, I'm doing this series. This is the kind of ethos behind it.
yeah.
And just, you know, and they can say, it's really, really sorry, Luke. I just haven't got the time at the minute. So,
Yeah.
you know, and I've had a few people do that, which is absolutely fine. But then I've had some people go, absolutely, just tell me when and where.
When and where.
So,
yeah, I think that's what I need to do. I just need to be a little bit braver next year.
yeah.
Be like, would you mind? I've got this idea. Can you do this? Or would you want to do this?
Yeah. And I do find the majority of the booktube community are very supportive and helpful. And the larger channels will always, you know, if there's a smaller channel or an up and coming channel, they will always like champion it and try and help out in any way. So, you know, they're not really like, oh, another booktube channel, you could stay down there while I'm up here. You know, there's none of, I've not personally not come across anything like that with any of them.
No, I haven't either. I feel like it's a little bit different as well in this community compared to like the lifestyle YouTube community. There is no competition, I'd like to say personally, that I've experienced in this community, in the sense of it's great if you can make money off of booktube, but I don't feel as though as many people make their full living off of just booktube as we may believe.
Yeah.
Whereas the lifestyle and the like Twitch people, that's how they make their income.
Yeah.
And it's that or nothing. So it's, I don't know, sometimes it can feel like a little bit more competitive because it's like, well, I need to
absolutely
get on with X amount of brands because that's going to pay my rent this month.
Yeah.
Whereas we're all just like, we read books.
Yeah.
We just want to talk about books.
Yeah, I watched an interesting chat with Tutor Ramble, and they had Johan from Library of a Viking on.
Yeah.
And they were talking about like the video. I think the video was called "Why You Should Start a BookTube Channel" or something. And they were going through the processes. Like Johan, I think he's got like a master's degree in business or something like that. So he approached his BookTube as a business. In everything he did and the strategy and stuff. And even though I didn't agree with his ethos, I massively appreciate the way he's done it, and he's been very successuul in the way he's done it. But it's not my particular ethos of booktubing. I look at my subs and I look at my numbers, but I don't. That's not my focus of my channel. My focus is the small community that I've got, and if I can build that community in the comments and everything like that, that's what I'm looking for. I'm just looking for a nice book community, and stuff, and that's really and just, you know, the whole creative side, supporting indie authors is a big thing on this channel as well, and I know it is for you as well. So, and you do find generally that the much more bigger channels tend to do trad only or very little of indie. I know that Mike Booksread, he's like, one of his goals next year was to read more indie books, because he thinks, you know, that the current trad market is not he's not the target audience. I can't agree with him. I don't think I'm the target audience with a lot of trad marketing. So he's, you know, he found Ryan Cahill last year, who's becoming like the indie sensation.
Yeah.
Um,
Ryan has caught the wave. Like,
yeah,
I
he really has.
remember when he released Of Blood and Ash. Is it Of Blood and Ash? Or Blood and Fire. Of Blood and Fire. I always get that muddled because there was another book that came out around the same time called Of Blood and Ash, and I get the two muddled all the time. I remember when he released that, and when it was actually for sale on his website, and he had 50 copies signed, numbered, and he was struggling to sell them, or not struggling, but like it was slower than it would be now.
Yeah.
And I was very lucky because I found that book and I read it quite quickly, and I had the audio, so I listened to The Fall as well. And he was doing arcs for Of Darkness and Light, and he was like, "Oh, I'm going to give these out to people that read the book." And I remember posting on my channel some gushing thing because I loved that book. I was like,
great.
I loved it so much I can't remember the bloody title, but don't hold that against me. My memory is not always the best. But I loved it, and I did this like glowing review of it, and I was like, oh my gosh, if I could get an arc like that would be amazing. And he was one of the first arcs I ever got. I still have it on my shelf.
That's so cool.
And he was like, well, I'm going to have to send you one now. And then after that, he sent me the link to when they were selling Of Darkness and Light. He was like, for all your support, here's the link for Of Darkness and Light to get a signed numbered copy. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And I've got the signed numbered copies from then on. So I do have duplicates of because I've got the special editions, and I've got the signed numbered special editions.
Yeah.
Because I have a problem. But it's incredible to see him then when he was like, yeah, I've written this book. And everyone was like, oh, okay, this sounds interesting. Cool. To where he's at now. And it's like, wow.
It's mad, isn't it? It's like one of those lightning in a bottle moments. He released it at the right time. Like it was
he got it to the right people, because I'm pretty sure
got it to the right people.
He was one of the first people that read it. I don't know if Petrick was, probably though, and
yeah, I think he was.
They liked it and reviewed it, and then suddenly all these eyes came on it, and loads of people loved it. Now, don't get me wrong, I've also seen people say they don't like it, but that's what I love about books. Like, we can't all love and hate the same books. Like, there are some books that I absolutely think are rubbish, but other people love them, and that's great for them.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit iffy about best and worst books. When you
it's just a subjective thing, isn't it? At the end of the day, it's basically the worst. Anything in their worst section is just a book they didn't like. It's not a bad book.
No, but I feel like I love watching people's worst books. I'm like, tell me why you hated it, and I want to see if I like it.
Yeah.
But I also know that they can do really well on views because people are like me and they're like that, or people are the opposite and they are diehard for that book and they take great offense. And it's like, I get it. You love it. I'm glad you love it. I'm so happy that you loved it. However, you have to understand that not everyone's going to love it.
Yeah.
And there are two sides. And it's not a personal attack on you or the author. I'm just telling you why it didn't work for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that his book came out at a time where, you know, there wasn't a lot of the kind of traditional epic fantasy on the trad bookshelves. There was no new ones anyway, and I think that a lot of the indie crowd, the indie authors, there was some great fantasy coming out, but it wasn't of that old. Like certain people were craving that traditional kind of high fantasy book, and he just brought this one down, and it's like, there you go. You know, it's got a lovely modern twist. It's got a kind of modern feel to it, but it has that lovely, almost nostalgic high fantasy feel to it, which I think a lot of people latched onto, and also cause a lot of people to not like it because some people just don't like traditional epic fantasy, which is absolutely fine.
Yeah. You like what you like. I like what I like. That's completely cool.
Exactly. Name a book that you really, really love that you know has been like not widely liked in reviews.
Oh, Eragon is one of them. However, I don't like the rest of the series.
Just that first book.
I loved the first book, and I think
Yeah.
me and Lisa also do a like book club read along thing where we read a book every month and then we come and do a live show and give all the spoilers on it. We picked the Aragon series, and I was like, oh my gosh, I loved this book when I was a teenager. I'm so excited for you to try it. The second book's a bit of slow burn because it's got so much like context and world building, and it's a traveler book, and like they're doing things to make the plot in the third one so much better. But you got to bear with it. And I read it again, and I was like, no, no. I still loved the first one. I was like, I love this for the nostalgia, and it was probably one of the very first like more, although it's still YA, more epic boy and his dragon stories that I read. So I loved the first book, but the rest of them I was just very sad about, which is sad. But I know that one's got iffy reviews.
I'm trying to think of a book I really like that no one else likes, and I can't think.
That's the problem. You just get put on the spot.
Yeah.
I don't really know of anything else. But then again, I feel like I'm looking at my shelves and I'm like, haven't read that, haven't read that, haven't read that, haven't read that.
Yeah. Even though it is now a booktube darling, I do think Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb.
I struggled with that one. Yes.
Would get a lot of people struggle with it because Fitz is a stupid character. He's just very stupid. He makes really, really stupid decisions. And in later books becomes a very he's young, but apparently he becomes quite nasty in future books because he becomes an adult. But a lot of people don't get on with that book. I loved it. I love it.
I found it really slow. I remember reading it and posting on YouTube when I read it back in 2021, I think. Read this, 3 stars, I'll carry on. And I can't remember who it was. It might have I can't remember who it was. Someone turned around to me on the comments or whatever and went, if you didn't like that one, I don't think you like the rest of them.
Yeah.
And I was like, fair point. However, I feel like now I've got through the first book and I've got an idea of where we're going, I'll continue to like them. So I haven't read them since, but I did think this year, before I went into my like weird slumpy period, I was like, I'm going to give that book another go because I'm more in my adult epic fantasy, slower burning books with all the context and all the world building and chunky books. Maybe I'll love it now. Didn't finish it, but I do have plans to still reread and then carry on with that series because I've got quite a few of them on my shelf. I've just unfortunately not continued because there's so many things on these shelves.
Yeah, it is very ponderous for a short book. I mean, it's a relatively short book in terms of fantasy books.
But it doesn't feel like it. And the chapters are really long.
They are very long, yes. They are long. It is quite... I have to be in the right mood, but I do like a ponderous book every now and then. But I understand when people pick it up. If you're not ready for that, you'll fall off it quite easily, I think.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I feel like that's the perfect book to read in that weird... like, that series would be perfect to read between Christmas and New Year. When you've got nowhere to be, nothing to think about. You're just eating leftover Christmas food in your pajamas. Like, you can just... meander. I feel like that's the maybe that's what I'm going to do in Christmas and New Year.
Yeah.
Meander through Robin Hobb. I can't do that. I've got some books to read.
Here's a loaded question. What are you reading right now?
Many things. Let me get up my Goodreads. I think it was like 16 the other day, but I think I've changed.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So one thing, if you are watching this and you don't know me as a person, I can quite easily read part of a book, put it down, pick it up months later and be like, oh yeah, there I am, and carry on. Can't remember titles of books and characters once I've finished. When I'm in the book, I'm in the book. And it's like a little bookmark in my brain. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
13 books, my
13.
God.
That's good because I've like soft DNF'd some stuff.
Have you?
Yeah, I was partway through Children of Time and enjoying it, but that's quite a ponderous book in my opinion.
Yeah, it is.
So I put that on hold because that's not what I need right now. because
Yeah,
I'm not reading things.
a very specific headspace is needed to read that book, but I love it.
Yeah,
I love
I
Tchaikovsky
really
anyway.
like the premise of it. I want to finish and continue the series, but right now is not the time.
If you want,
And I think that's fine.
if you want really exciting, fast-paced Tchaikovsky, start
Read
that
it.
series. If you read it,
I've
oh,
read it.
read it.
I've read that one. I've got the rest of that series on my shelf to read, but I've read that one.
I've only read book one.
So have I.
But
Series.
have you read Dogs of War
No.
by Tchaikovsky? That's a nice short one. That's really cool. It's basically most of the POV is of a basically genetically engineered cyber dog who is basically a weapon of war and starts having a conscience and questioning its purpose.
That kind of sounds not the same, but a similar vein as Service Model, one of his newest ones, which
I've got on the shelf. Want to read? Yeah,
I've got that on the shelf too. Which is
Rockstar. Hello, I love the Christmas jumper. My Christmas jumper. Well, of course you do.
yes. Star Wars.
It says on the bottom, you can't see it, but it says, "This is my jolly face," and it's got a picture of Darth Vader on it.
There you go. But yeah, I'm reading a selection of things. I'm reading Sarah J. Maas, as I said earlier. I'm trying to complete the Throne of Glass series. I'm reading Witch Hazel by T.C. Roberts Finn. My words today. That's really interesting, actually. It is an indie fantasy that has recently been published, and it gives me Witcher vibes. And even in the description, it's inspired by The Witcher, Blade Runner, and Bloodborne. Now, I don't know what Bloodborne is, but I know what the other two are. And I would say it is very similar to Witcher.
What's the name?
Witch Hazel, all one word. Looks like this.
Who's the author?
T.C. Roberts Finn. I feel like it's very Witcher-esque in the fact that it feels quite episodic.
Yeah.
The very first Witcher book, which is like loads of short stories just in one thing. It's kind of like that. You're not defeating your TBR.
Oh.
I'm not. I am getting slowly crushed by my TBR.
Oh, mine's collapsed. I mean, it's.
I've run out of shelf space. Like this shelf, you can just about see here. This is double stacked, and there are more shelves like it that you can't see that are double stacked.
I can't find him on. Why can't I find him on?
I don't know.
Goodreads.
It's only one H. So Witch Hazel, as in WITCHA.
Ah, got you. TC Robert thing. Got it. Right. Add that on.
That one.
Add that on and feel the weight and pressure on top of my head.
Yeah. And then I have started but not finished Lightfall by Ed Crocker. There's another. Well, he's not an indie author because it's been picked up traditionally by an American publishing
Adrian
house.
Gibson's reading that at the minute. He says it's very good.
I've started it. I got 8 pages in. I need to continue. But I really like the premise that it's just all vampires.
Yeah.
Like different types, like different level of vampires. Like if you're a servant, you're only allowed certain blood, and that doesn't really sustain you. That just kind of like keeps you going.
Just keeps you going as like a drone. Almost. Yeah.
Pretty much. And then
cool.
Within like the first couple of pages, this one of the main characters who I've met so far is hiding another sort of blood, and they're all like pretty basic. It's like, oh, the lowest can have like goat's blood for argument's sake, and then the next layer up can have like fox or something, and that will give you better eyesight and faster speed and more agility, and because it's like the next grade up, like it's a little bit better blood. And I was like, that's a really interesting concept, actually.
That's a really cool concept. I'm gonna put that. I think I've already put that on my TBR. That's Adrian's fault. I just hope my TBR pile doesn't gain sentience as Darkstar. That's great.
I don't know.
Doesn't start speaking to you going, read me.
I think that's just the voice in my head.
Yeah.
On off.
I'm just about to start Beyond Redemption.
What's that?
By Michael R. Fletcher.
I have one of his books on my list as well that I'm currently reading.
Apparently, it's very, very grim, dark. Like it's the
Mm.
grimmest of grim dark you can get. Matt's book reviews.
Yeah.
He reviewed it, I think last month or something.
Hmm.
And like he raved about it, and apparently there was a massive spike in Fletcher's book sales. He's like, "What's going on?" And everyone was like, "It's
Amazing.
Matt's fault." That's great. See, that's what a reviewer can do.
Exactly. And I love Matt's video. I don't know when it was posted, but he did like a breakdown of like transparency for him and his booktube. And
That was
even
great. Yeah,
he said like he was like, I just caught a wave somewhere,
yeah.
and I made a bit of money and I bought a better camera, and then my reviews got a little bit better, and I bought this, and then my reviews got a little bit better, and now I'm where I am. And I'm like, that's very organic growth, which I
Hmm.
appreciate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm,
Yeah,
I
and
love that.
his channel's very simple. He literally just reviews a lot,
Yeah.
which defies the YouTube algorithm, which tends not to, review videos tend to be the weakest or less
Yeah.
watched on most people's booktube, but he just does it anyway. But
Hmm.
I just like his one take, natural. Here's my thoughts, just finished, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's great. It's really nice.
Hmm.
I do. There was a I can't remember if you remember. I think Library of a Viking did a video called "The Dark Side of BookTube," and
Yeah.
it caused a lot of responses from a lot of booktubers. And I love Matt. He was
It
just
did.
like he did a really good, intelligent, slightly reserved. I think he was getting quite. You could tell he was getting quite emotional, riled up about it. But
Mm.
he kept a measured response. But I agreed with him a lot more than Library of Vikings take on it.
Yeah, I think it's because this, not just this platform, but social media in general is so wide that the problem that I found personally with Johann's video, although I understand where he was coming from,
Yeah,
the idea of splitting the entirety of this community into two camps and saying that half of them don't try enough
yeah.
can be quite offensive. And I mean, I was sat there going, "Well, that's me then." Like,
It got my back up. I'm not going to lie. It did get my back up
yeah,
a bit,
it got a lot of people's backs up, and
particularly for someone who's literally just starting out, full of hope and going right. I've got it was a bit of a knock. It was a hit. It was
yeah,
a right knock.
yeah,
Yeah.
because it did make a lot of people, myself included, going, "So why do I bother?" Because if we're only in two camps and I am not in the other camp,
Mm,
then what's the point? What is
yeah.
the point? And then I kind of, as we do when we're upset, you have a bit of a rant, you get it all off your chest, and then you go, right, reevaluate where I am and
Yeah.
why I'm doing this. And I was like, because I like the people I've met. And I love talking to new authors. Well, I've got one of the books next to me. I can never remember
Yes.
Jeff's book. Jeff Spate. I
Jeff
would have
Spade.
never found Jeff Spate
Yeah.
if it wasn't for this community, because the lovely man reached out to me and went, "Do you want to read my book?" Yes, please. And
Yeah.
then I've loved the other two. Like, I would never have found him, or maybe not had such an interaction with his books, if it wasn't for this community. I would never have found D.W. Ross as another one that I absolutely adore. He's
Mm,
such a nice person. And I would say we are friends. And I wouldn't have found him without this channel. I wouldn't have found you without this
yeah.
community, because that is what this community is about. It's about bringing people together. And I don't like the idea of us all being pitted against each other. You are either
Mm,
this or you are that. That's not fair. That's not the
yeah.
point.
Yeah. Well put. Well put. And I think he I think Johan then did a follow up video, and I think he kind of, because of the response, I think he kind of realized that he may have just been a bit too heavy handed with what
Mm,
he was saying in that video, and he did the
yeah.
follow up, kind of not apologizing, but kind of putting it in a different way. So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
I mean, don't get me
but
wrong
the
though.
response was strong,
Oh
to
gosh,
say
yeah.
the least.
Don't get me wrong. I saw comments on that video being like, I started my channel whenever, like this year, and I'm already at 10,000 followers. And I was like, amazing. Well
Yeah.
done, you. But then I went and looked at the content and I was like, for me, this isn't the content I want to make because I don't read these sorts of books, or I can't read this fast, or whatever the reason was. I was like, I really wish I could make this sort of content, but I can't. Like,
Yeah.
I would love to just be able to, take so much time out and read books. And I know we can all do it, and I know we can. However, I'm not the fastest reader.
No, I'm not.
I don't have the best attention span. And I quite like coming home and talking to my other half as well.
Yeah, exactly. There's
Otherwise,
loads.
you're like, nope, nope. And that's why lockdown was so good for my reading in a way, because I wasn't allowed out of the house. I was put on furlough, as many of us were in this country, and I had nothing to do. So I would get up every day, and every morning I would do a workout. I would read my book, and then I would go about my day, and I'd still fit in everything else. My life doesn't look like that anymore, unfortunately. I don't have time to just get up and read my book and work out. I just about manage to get out of the house on time sometimes.
Yeah.
And then I come home and my brain is heavy, and I'm like, I just want to watch TV or scroll or sleep.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the time when I come home from work, I've done 10 hours, and
Yeah.
and I'm thinking, oh, I could lie on the sofa and read my book for an hour, but it doesn't happen like that, because I lie on the sofa and I fall asleep because
Yeah.
I'm knackered.
Yeah.
So yeah, I tend to read between 3 or 4 books a month, and that maximum. And I probably won't finish all of them in that month either.
My reading is so erratic at the minute. Like, there have been some months, and this is a lot for me. There have been some months where I've hit like 9-10 books.
Yep.
And there have been some months where I've hit 1.
And
because I read so many things at the same time, which I don't recommend doing, don't be like me. But because I read so many things at the same time, there can be months where I'm like, oh, I've just got 100 pages left of 5 books. I can finish that. Or I go on site and my job is very much, I need my eyes and I need to talk to people, but I can also stand next to whatever project I'm working on with my headphone in. As long as I've got one ear free to hear people, I can stand there with my headphone in listening to audiobooks, and I can rattle through loads. And that's usually where the consistency is. If you look at my reading, the months with the highest consistency is, I'm like, oh, I've been on site for X amount of weeks in that month. That's why, because I've gone through 3 or 4 audiobooks, because I can.
Yeah.
And no one necessarily talks to me for most of the day. So
I think one of my handicaps for not reading as many books in a month is that I don't get on with audiobooks. I can't immerse myself in the story audibly. It has to be words on a page to kind of just make me just forget about it.
Yeah.
If I did do audio, flipping it, I'll probably be doing about 10 books a month, but alas.
Flying.
Yeah.
I get that.
The only audiobooks I can do is informative ones. So I'm currently reading a book, listening to a book on Spotify, which actually Murphy Napier narrates, funny enough, because I knew she was doing some narration. Where is it?
I've lost it.
Audiobooks on writing and world building. So it's basically like about creating worlds and stuff like that, because I am writing a novella at the minute, so just soaking in all the information I can.
That makes sense. I mean, I usually listen to mine either when I'm driving, when I'm blocking people out at work, or when I'm on site. And I find that when I am listening on site, I'm more likely to take in more detail and more information, because I'm not sat in the office reading emails, replying to emails. I'm stood on site with a team, them doing their job, and I'm interacting when I'm needed, when I need to step in. So I literally am stood there for 8 to 12 hours, headphone in, not talking to anybody.
Paid for that? That's not fair.
It's it can be great, but there is a downside to it as well, as there is to most things. I'll come home or I'll go back to my hotel room, mainly when I'm on site by myself. When I'm with other people from the office, like it's nowhere near as rough is the wrong word, but nowhere near as tough is probably the better way.
Yeah.
Because when I come back to my hotel room, I either talk to my partner, I talk his ear off, and I call him, and I'm like, I need to talk to somebody, or I talk to my mum. I haven't spoken to anyone all day.
Yeah.
Have an hour of thoughtless babble that I've been thinking about all day because I've got no one to talk to.
Yeah.
So it's like, and as I said earlier, I think because I'm an extrovert, sometimes it is a challenge because I just want to talk to people. But being abroad, a lot of my teams will have people who speak English, but obviously not everybody does, and I don't expect them to. But I can't learn every language that I work with.
Yeah.
It's just not physically possible for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, it can be tough, but it's good. Obviously, I still do my job, so I must enjoy it.
Yeah, it's quite funny because I work in retail, so I'm talking to people nonstop all the time.
Yeah,
So when I get home,
you don't want to talk to
I
anybody.
don't want to talk to anyone. But unfortunately, Mel, who works freelance at home, hasn't
Yeah,
talked to anyone all day.
she's like
So
me. I'm like, talk
yeah,
to me.
yeah,
Yeah, that's like me and my other half.
yeah.
When I work from home, especially, and I'm like, no one's called me all day. I haven't spoken to anyone. He'll come home from a 12-hour shift, and I'm like, so how's your day? Fine. No. How was your day? What did you do? Who did you see? Who were you with? Like, I don't want to talk to you. Like, oh, okay.
Bless him. Bless him. Oh dear.
It is, bless him, but at the same time, talk to me. That's why I talk to a camera now, because I'm like,
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, we've got to talk. We got to talk to the people that love the stuff we love, haven't we?
Yeah,
That's
and
cool.
understand what I'm on about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's. I mean, in real life, I don't know what I call it real life, but in real life, I don't have any friends that read what I read. So the book community is my savior in that department because I get to. Apart from the only person who likes fantasy and sci-fi is my older brother. Who I don't get to see very often, but anytime we get together, we bore the tears out of everybody because we're like, "Have you read this? Have you read this? Have you read this?"
Yeah, that's like my best mate from uni. She started with ACTA, as most people are, and she's racing through that. And I'm like, okay, biding my time until I can be like, here's other things you need to read because I've already given her stuff. I've got like duplicates of books, and I'm like, just take these. Like, I don't care if you don't like them, give them back or sell them. I don't really care. But try this and try this. And she's like, I've got no room left in my shelves, and I'm like, I still have more things to give you, more things to get you to buy.
That's so funny. That's so funny. Right, I have got a book. I was just thinking about a book because we're talking about how we don't like romance. I read a book earlier this year, which is a kind of romance, but it's one of my favorite books of the year. Frontier by Grace Curtis.
That on my shelf somewhere.
It's so good. It's really short. You'll blast through it.
It's questionable at this point.
Yeah.
I think I've got it on my shelf on my outside on the landing.
It's a climate change themed post-apocalyptic sapphic romance western.
Fair enough.
And it's brilliant.
That's a lot of words.
It is. It's the only way I can describe it. But that's pretty much what it is, and it's really, really good fun. It's science fiction, but if I was ever going to recommend a science fiction book to someone who's never read science fiction or doesn't read a lot of science fiction, I'd recommend that because it has a very fantasy vibes to it because of the Western kind of setting. But it's post-apocalyptic. It's set in like a world that's been ravaged by climate change, and basically this astronaut crashes to Earth. Basically finding her lost love, who she's lost and hasn't seen for ages. And it's just really, really good.
Nice.
And that's coming from someone who does not actively read
romance.
or like romance. Yeah.
I'll have to add that to the list if it's not already on my shelf. I feel like it is. I don't know. I can't keep track. This is why I need my spreadsheet back, but I lost track of the spreadsheet, and now the spreadsheet will own me. It's going to be like an all-day task to like remake my spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Because there's so many things.
And again, it's one of those books like that's her debut novel, and I wouldn't know it. I would say that's her like 4th or 5th novel, but yeah, superb writing.
I love finding people like that.
Yeah,
really do.
Really, really cool.
I've got so many things that I need to read next year. Just need to come out of the slump.
Yes. So, what are your reading plans for Christmas then?
I've got a Spiffbo book to read.
Oh, how's your Spiffbo going? I'm not judging this year. I've kind of.
No, I know. Can't
I
believe
know.
it. I do understand though. Really understand.
I've done 2 years in a row. Absolutely loved it. But it takes me away from my personal TBR a lot.
Yeah.
So this year I just wanted a break so I could just concentrate on my own TBR. And it's been a rubbish reading year for me. So it's probably a good it's probably a good thing that I'm not doing Spiffbo this year.
It's been tough trying to read with the slump that I've been going through this whole year. But I do feel as though a lot of the books that we've been given in our batches are just not necessarily for me or for me at the time that I was reading them, which is both the best thing and the worst thing about Spiffbo, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And the hardest thing for authors is like it is so subjective. Your book could be found by someone who is perfect for your book. And that's great. You could go through to you could be their finalist, semi-finalist, whatever, and then the rest of the team could read it and love your book too. Or you could get missed because that specific reader doesn't read what you've written.
Yeah.
And I get that that's really tough to understand. I'd say that my Spiffbo has been going in peaks and troughs. But we're getting there. My team put forward Mushroom Blues as their finalist.
Great book.
You weren't
massive. Yeah, you were not as keen on it as others.
No, but I did really enjoy its uniqueness, which I think is what pushed it into me being like, everyone else needs to read this. And then I don't know. I'm hoping to find some gems in the remaining ones that I haven't read yet.
Yeah,
from the finalists, but I don't know. I do not know.
Yeah,
I do love Spiffbo in the fact that I discover authors I've never heard of ever.
Yes, and, that's the great thing about it.
I get to read their stuff, and then I'm like, oh, I really love this book. Or like the fact that some finalists end up being picked up traditionally, like The Lost War.
Yep.
By what's his face? Justin Lee Anderson. I have him on my shelf. Yeah. Or The Grey Bastards. Apparently that
Grey Bastards. What a book. That's such a good book.
That's on my shelf. I haven't read it.
Oh my god.
What else has been picked up? Something else.
Darkstar's asking what Spiffbo is. Right. Spiffbo stands for
Self-Published Indie Fantasy Blog Off. And it was created by Mark Lawrence, who is a traditionally published author. But I believe he's got indie stuff as well.
He has, yeah.
And you get 300 authors enter, and it's split between 10 teams. So every team gets 30 books to read within a specific period of time. And from that, they have to put forward a semi-finalist. So what usually happens is your team will then further break down the 30 books, and then you will pick your favorite book from your small batch that you get given by your team captain, and then put that forward. And if everyone else likes it and reads it and agrees, then that will go forward to be your finalist. And then all the other teams will then read your book that you've picked, and you'll read all the other finalists. So it goes from 300 books, 30 books per team. Each team puts forward one finalist, which leaves us with 10 finalists. And then out of those 10 finalists, out of a numerically rated system, we come out with a winner. I think.
I'm really glad that you explained that, because that was better than my answer was going to be.
What was your answer going to be? We all just read things and they're indie.
That's essentially what it is. And it's great for getting indie authors. It's a really good way of getting indie authors work out there, even if they don't make the semi-finals, just in that initial round.
Yeah, because
I've known authors that have sold like 1,000 books off it.
Yeah, and there's so many people that go through and read, like Dom did it from Dominish Books at one point.
Yeah,
I don't know if he did all of them, but he was like reading opening lines and ranking them. There's also a cover, or there used to be, I don't think we did it this year, a cover competition. So
because of the controversy last year.
There's always a controversy because it is indie. The whole competition itself, it's free to enter as far as I'm aware. None of the judges get paid, and if they do, I don't, so that's not fair. But no one gets paid. There's no monetary value. It is just getting your name and your book out there. Rob J. Hayes is also a previous winner.
Yeah.
I love his books. I didn't discover him, but I've read more of his stuff this year. I personally discovered Rob J. Hayes.
Have you started any of his God Eater stuff yet?
I've read Demon. I need to read Deathless and then Herald.
Cool. I've not started it yet, but I will do. I have got the Kickstarter edition.
Me too.
Which is fucking beautiful.
It's, I don't know if you can see. Yeah, that's better, because I'm like, mine's over here somewhere and you can't really see it.
It's just the art that it's just beautiful. The artwork's
yeah,
incredible.
Can't wait for the rest of them. However, I know we're going to be waiting not a while, but I think the plan was every other year.
Yeah, it's going to be a long one.
It is a trilogy of trilogies, so that's fun as well. And he's releasing something else on December 17th, so I've got 6 more days to figure out what the heck he's on about.
I know what it is, because I was one of the beta readers on it.
Inside information.
I'll tell you off air.
Okay.
Yeah. All I can say, it's a novella. That's all I can say.
And then the other good thing about Spiffbo is now that they've teamed up with, there's lots of good things about Spiffbo, but they've teamed up with, is it Grimdark Press? No, that's a magazine.
Grimdark magazine. Yeah, yes. Wraithmarked.
And they are doing special editions of previous winners. So the first 2 is the Rob J. Hayes and sort of Kagan. Yes. So excited for that.
I don't think anything. The problem with the Sword, nothing will ever beat this edition, the Kickstarter edition with the silver foil.
But I don't have that edition, so an edition will beat that edition for me personally, because
that's the most expensive book I own, because it was a lot of money.
I think the most I've ever spent on a book is Ryan Carhill's special editions with the shiny edges, which are on the top shelf up here.
Oh yeah,
they're like 50 quid a pop.
Yeah, that was more expensive, but it was a one-off Kickstarter.
Oh god, no!
But you could go for the cheaper version, but I went for all the
whole hog
tassels and all the extras and stuff, because it is my favorite book of all time.
I did really enjoy that book. Yeah. Like, I gave it 5 stars to the point where I was talking about it with Lisa, and I was like, I didn't like one of the main characters, and she was like, so why have you given it 5 stars? I was like, because I didn't like them. Yeah. Because I was so much like, you're annoying. And the author did that.
Is that the husband by any chance?
The husband, and then the main female character, for a large portion, I just wanted to strangle her.
Yeah. I understand why, yeah, definitely.
And then also because there are other things that happen in that book. And whenever things are described on the back and you've got this idea that certain things are going to happen or certain people are going to make it and then they don't, and you're like, well, what the heck is the rest of these pages for?
Yeah, for anyone who hasn't ever read Sword of Kaigen, you'll get to the middle of the book, and the middle of the book could be the ending of any other book.
Yeah.
And then you've got half a book left. You're like, well, what are we going to do? And it's brilliant.
Yeah. What was the point in the first half?
But it's one of those books which does something that is rarely done in books, TV, or media, which is the aftermath of a big event.
Yeah.
Like, usually you have the massive big battle, a little bit everyone's happy, little thing, book ends. This, it's in the middle, and then all the consequences and everything that happened afterwards, and that's what makes it fantastic and very unique.
Dark,
very fucking dark.
It reminds me of certain parts of Poppy War, that series, because if anyone hasn't read the Poppy War trilogy, the first book ends on the start of a really big war, essentially, and then the second book continues from that premise. And just some of the realities of war that no one really talks about are just peppered into conversations.
Yeah.
Especially what happens to females or ex-female soldiers when they've been captured, and the descriptions in that book of like the main character is called Rin, and some of the scenes that she stumbles upon during the war and the gruesome things that humanity can do to each other just because they view the other race as other is terrible, but so impactful.
Yeah.
And I loved that series.
I think you're like Wingspan of Treason, because it deals with a lot of similar themes like that, like the like after like colonialism and you know, the impact of that on the cultures that have been basically governed by an alien invasion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it deals a lot with that. It's very, very good.
It is on my list. I need to get it.
Yeah, it's a chonker. It took
I
me.
know. I'm thinking ebook.
It took me a long while to read, but I did take my time with it. It's one of those books where I thought I need to read this slowly because I need to really soak it all up, and I'm so glad I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We are approaching the hour and 20-minute mark. I think we've been rambling on.
20-minute mark.
Yeah, we've been rambling on quite well.
I ramble well.
What should we finish on? What are your plans for your channel in 2025?
I'm trying to keep a channel.
That's a good answer.
You know, like, not that anyone's going to take it off me, but, well, touch wood, no one's going to take it off me. But yeah, just trying to diversify my content a little bit more. But I'm trying to work out what that means for me, because I've seen so many really fantastic ideas, like people who have like TBR games. I'm not going to sit with cardboard and make a game. I am not in that creative headspace. That's fine. You can watch it back.
That's fine. You can watch it on the replay.
Yeah, 100%. Put it on in the background while you're doing your washing and cleaning and stuff, because it's it's like being.
And also, Alex, it's your fault.
That's just mean.
But yeah, you can watch a replay. Thank you very much for popping in. That's great to see you.
Yeah, I don't know what changing my content will be, because I do a lot of the same stuff. But I like making content that I like to watch. I think that's the whole point. I love hauls. I try not to film too many hauls. I'm trying to cut back on the book spending, but however, it doesn't really work.
No, I've tried it.
Buying and book reading, two different hobbies, and I'm very much in both. And I'm definitely better at the book buying than the book reading part of the hobby. So like hauls I love, but I also love watching people's like TBRs and what they want to read. However, I'm becoming more of a mood reader, so I need to rethink that a little bit, I think, because the strict TBRs are not working for me, because I'm like, I've got to read that. Even if I'm so excited to read it, I'm like, oh, I've said I'm going to read it, now I have to read it.
I've found quite a lot of YouTubers are doing that at the minute. Tori from Tori talked in a video, becoming more of a mood reader. Taylor from Made Between the Pages, she does like a quarterly TBR MBR, because it might change. And I think more and more people are doing that, because I think keeping up a really strict TBR month. I mean, Mike's book reads, he plans for the year. I just couldn't do that.
I get so bored. Like me and Nisa plan what books we're going to read every year for our book club that we run, because we have to, so that we make sure we read up until from January to November, and we take December off. So we need to make sure that the series that we're going to read are completed and fit into that timeline. And we still have changes within that. We'll decide that we don't like a book, or we want to DNF a book or DNF a series, and we're like, right, okay, we'll take this month off. What other one can we fill in with the gap? And we'll use that flexibility. But like my whole reading list, no, because as much as I try and keep up with new anticipated releases that are coming out, I do not. And I find things, I'm like, oh, I want to read that actually, or this sounds really interesting. And I find that withholding myself from reading that makes me resent everything else I'm reading, which is not ideal, because it's not fair on me, and it's not fair on the author, because I'm like, well, your book has now got a sour taste because I'm withholding myself from reading something else, which makes no sense.
Exactly. Dark Star, I agree. I think when I mood read, I do tend to enjoy books a little bit more as well, because it almost becomes like a chore if you're for me personally, it can sometimes feel like a bit like work, a bit like a chore. And some people are fine with that. A lot of booktubers are fine with that. But I'm like you, I find myself mood reading more and more now.
I feel like if this was my job, and you know that's like the ultimate dream, you
That is the
know,
dream.
making money off of book stuff like this, then yeah, I could probably stick to a stricter TBR. But at the minute, and maybe if I change jobs or become less all over the place, maybe then I could go back to being strict with my TBR, because I used to do it and I used to love it, because I was like, I know exactly what I'm reading
Mm,
every single month. I allow myself to have some deviation. However, I know I'm going to read A, B, C, D, E. And once I've read that, then I can read whatever I want. Or I can carry on with a series that I've started because I've read it for book C this month.
mm.
And that works really well when I have nothing else occupying my brain. But apparently my brain is too full. I can't do that in a minute.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah,
being open to allowing yourself to read and just enjoy what you're doing, because for the majority of us this is not a job. We might wish it was, but it's not. So it's a hobby. We need to keep the fun.
yeah,
Otherwise,
exactly.
what's the point?
Yeah, regardless of the numbers,
Yeah.
this we do this for our enjoyment of reading and talking about books at the end of the
Yeah.
day. So, and that's if it becomes anything other than that, it's
Yeah.
time to step back. I
Yes.
think.
Yeah. 100%.
Absolutely. I've enjoyed today. It's been great.
Oh,
It's
it
been
has
great
been.
chatting to you. Yeah,
And
we
thanks
haven't
for
chatted for
having me.
ages. Hey.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, anytime. We'll have you back next year as well. I think next year, once I get the creators collective going, I might start doing like roundtable formats every so often. So having a few booktubers together,
That'd
just having a good old natter and debates about stuff. So
I'm
definitely,
all up for that.
definitely have you back on.
100%.
I'll put all your details down there. But where can people find you if they want to know more about what you do?
This is really weird being on this side, because this is not usually my thing. So you can find me when I can log on. You can find me on Instagram under Not So Secret Bookaholic. Currently, Instagram is having a fit and I can't log in. You can also find me on my YouTube channel under the same name, and then on Twitter it's N or X, whatever it's called. It's like NSS Bookaholic, and then Blue Sky is NS Secret Bookaholic, because I like to be different and difficult. But also because usernames are very difficult to just acquire to keep them all the same. I upload usually at least once a week on my YouTube channel, and it's usually a weekly reading vlog of me nattering. But I am doing Vlogmas at the minute, so shorts every single day. And today's a good one, actually, because I randomly filmed myself recommending 5 different indie books that I have read this year.
That's cool.
You lovely people. Just in case you needed a last minute Christmas present for the bookworm in your life.
Excellent. That's great stuff. Yeah, you can find me in all the usual places. It is currently the 11th today, and I think I've got 3 weeks worth of videos to squeeze into 2 weeks. So yeah, there might be an influx of videos coming quite soon. So I've got my top 5 reads of the year, and I've also got an interesting one, which is 6 or 7 standalones to put on your TBR next year to go in between series. So we've got some nice juicy standalone fantasy and sci-fi. Yes, I think ever so often people like a good standalone. Absolutely. So lots to come.
Commitment.
Yeah, exactly. Less commitment. I've got way too many series started that I need to finish, and that's another video that I'm going to do. So six series I'm going to complete in 2025. It's not a promise; it's a goal.
That's what I like to hear.
Yeah, it's a goal. It's not a promise, because I can't keep that promise.
No, me neither.
Cool. Right, we're going to sign off. Thank you very much for joining us. Who joined us live? Thank you very much. And for those who are watching on the replay, thank you for watching on the replay. And you can comment on any of the stuff we've been talking about below. And I'll see you later in the year. Thank you very much, Chels, once again. Have a lovely Christmas.
You too.
And we'll see you guys very soon. Bye-bye now.